Ask the Podcast Coach for May 10th, 2025. Oh, you know what? That channel's not hooked up. Well, this will be cut out of the podcast. I do not have my fourth channel hooked up to my sounds. There we go. And I still have my, we're just going to fix everything.
Fix it. Just fix it.
I just heard my email go off and I'm like, yeah, we don't need to I need to turn that setting off because all I hear is ding, ding every time I get email. Okay. So there we go. All right. Let's try that again, shall we? Where did you go? There it is. Ask the Podcast Coach for May 10th, 2025.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it is Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from theschoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only right over there. There he is, Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Happy, beautiful Saturday morning here in Nebraska. We're expecting highs in the 80s. It's going to be
nice.
Glorious. Hopefully, you and the listeners, maybe get a little time outside this weekend. And happy Mother's Day. I think it's Mother's Day weekend. So happy.
It is Mother's Day weekend. So, yeah. And don't buy her kitchen appliance. That doesn't go over well. I would, unless you really wants a new coffee machine or something. But I was thinking about that.
I've made that mistake. I've made that mistake before.
So you ready for? We're going to do something crazy before we get into the coffee pour.
Oh,
you ready,
okay.
Jim? We've never looked like this before. Ta-tan. Oh, where are you at? Wait. Oh, boy, it was going to be so good. Oh, that's my fault. All right. Well, see, this is what you get when you play with stuff. And that apparently is going to come up every time I go back to this screen. So
nice. Well, get subscribed. Click on the subscribe button. Get it done.
Anyway, yes, I was playing with my Stream Deck last night, and boy, it tuckered me out. Apparently, this is not as cool as I thought it was. But you know what is cool?
A little coffee pour. And
that coffee pour, of course, is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. Because they see you before they even hear you, and you want to look good. You want to make a good first impression. I've used Mark a bunch for a lot of my artwork, and it's not just artwork. Hey, you need a website, and you want to look like really cool, like wow cool. Like when they come to your website, there's only one place to go, and that is podcastbranding.co. Why is it so cool? Because Mark's a podcaster, so you don't have to explain that to him. He's been podcasting forever, and he's got easily over 500 pieces of artwork, I would guess, at this point. Everybody goes to Mark, and everybody's doing it. Come on, man. What are you afraid of? Are you chicken? Mark, you don't have to be chicken of Mark because he's a super nice guy. He's Canadian. He's polite. That's it. We're going to peer pressure you into using podcastbranding.co. He really is a great guy. Check him out, and, tell him that Dave and Jim sent you because he's going to sit down with you and just work it out. Let him do the marketing. Let you do the podcasting.
You had me at, what are you, chicken?
I double dog dare you to go to podcastbranding.co.
I love that. What are you, chicken? Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story podcast.com. We didn't solve the mystery from last week. His most recent feature, Die Hard, right? Is it a Christmas movie? Is it not a Christmas movie? I was expecting some battles in the comments on YouTube, and it was kind of quiet. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's a Christmas movie. You should check it out today, based on a true story podcast at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
Yeah, what I messed up on this, I can fix this, I believe. Can I do this? No. I just need to see. I could assign you, because you're guest one in this screen. This is always fun to listen to. You're guest one here. But when I set up this scene, this is guest two, and yeah. So
do you like the close-up look on the, as we think about video really for podcasting? I think most people, maybe I'm wrong. I like this, the widescreen view of both of us and the stuff. I think this makes for a better presentation than the close up. I've done both. We did a whole season at Gallup. We did a whole season of Theme Thursday. So I did 35 episodes close. And I went back to this. I was like, I don't know if I want to be that close to the camera, or at least to the listener at that point. But I like this. I like this look. This is the widescreen view. I don't know. Chat room, what do you think? What do you guys like?
Yeah, there's we're set up now for if we go to three people. There's our typical three people, and then we have the three people where
Ooh, I like this one.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. So, yeah. So if you
This is
want to,
that's a good looking one.
yeah, if you jump into askthepodcastcoach.com/question, that'll be it. I know Gordon is in the chat room, and somebody asked me yesterday, what's the definition of liable? And I was like, oh, and I told them, I said, you need to go to firemark.com. That's the guy that can answer that question, because they were talking about criticizing different things and they wanted to do a review of stuff. And I go, well, I just remember what Gordon told me was you can talk about your experience. I did this and it broke. That's a fact. Right. I did this and but if you say these guys are weasels and you should never work with them.
Not that you would ever say that.
Right.
Not that you, Dave Jackson, would ever say
that. So that was, I was glad to see him in the chat room. And Jeff C is here. He had, and I forget the guy's name, but just go to his YouTube channel or wherever you want to go. He had a guy talking. He wrote a book on AI for small business. And I'm only halfway through that episode, and it was amazing. So always great to have the chat room here. Danny says, playing with my Stream Deck, not a euphemism. Good to know. Yes. Well, here, let's talk about, well, first of all, the thing that some people are losing their minds on, and I'm like, really? Spotify is going to start displaying your plays. So if you have one play, they'll show one. If you have, 1,000, they'll show that. And from what I understand, some people are like, this is an invasion of privacy. And I'm like, okay, they're just going to be like YouTube. Everybody does that on YouTube. I know we get no plays. Most of my shows get no plays on Spotify. The Podcast Rodeo Show did, for whatever reason, maybe a younger audience. But to me, that was like kind of the big news. And the fact that James Cridlin reached out to them and said, and what is a play? Like, how are we defining that? And they were like, no, we're not going to. And then they kind of told him it was a mark of, I forget how they put it, but something along the lines of if somebody hits play, like a mark of engagement or something. Like they just wouldn't just do it. So I thought that was kind of, I don't know. I was like, that's the story of the week. And so
slow week. It's been a slow
yeah.
podcasting week. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. I also kind of go like, I kind of wish everything was open in a way. It'd be fun if we all knew, like, wouldn't it be fun if we could see how many downloads Joe Rogan actually got, or, Jim and Jan talk jelly show, whatever. I'm just making that up. To me, I think the people that are complaining are the people that don't want you to know that, hey, I'm a top 0.5%, podcaster according to Listen Notes, but I only get 38 downloads a week. I'm like, I don't know. I just thought it was weird that sometimes I think it's like, well, what are we going to get upset about this week? What's this week thing that we're all going to complain about? Yeah, Chris says it's Spotify time. Checks my blood pressure. Dan Lefebvre from Based on a True Story podcast. If you want to see what Spotify is going to do next, just look at what YouTube is doing now. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. So
I think they just want to stay in the news. I hate to say this, but it's really good marketing because we talk about them all the time.
It's the, do I dare say it? It's the current president. He's really good at that. Let's talk about things like when he was running for a re-election. If people would have just quit talking about him, but he would say something really stupid. I'm going to use the Grand Canyon. We're going to fill it in. We're going to use it for a trash heap, and people are like, wait, what? And you're like, hey, he might do it. He's crazy, So, yeah,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
enough to get people talking about him again. And so that's always kind of, you just never know. I did see this. I wanted to bring, go ahead.
Hold on before we move away from that. Are they saying it's everybody's numbers are going to be shown, or
It sounds
because
that way.
like that used to be a feature where you could turn that on and turn it off in
In
some hosting, like
Spreaker.
some
Yep.
yeah. And so that was kind of nice. I don't know why I know why they're doing it, but it seems to me we should just allow the option, like allow the podcaster. It's their numbers,
Right.
Those numbers belong to them. Let them decide.
But they don't, because what are you paying for at
No,
Spotify?
right on. No, I understand. I understand.
The free. This is
I
what you
get
get
it.
with a free media host. Now,
I
Megaphone,
get it.
right? You're paying for that. So,
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to see.
Well, just leave. If you don't like it, leave. This is
Yes.
the thing I don't quite understand. Then you say, "Well, my listeners are there," and then you say, "Exactly." Like that's business, friends. That is business.
Yeah. We also can do this now. In theory, I think this should work. Ooh, we're moving on to our next topic, and our next topic is this one. He said, "There we go." Nope. Maybe. Come on. This is the share screen button. Honest. All right. I'll do it manual.
Does it need to go all the way through the animation? Is that what it's?
No, it's just that's just a slide. Here, let's go back to this.
Right.
And now if I go here, nope, my share screen button. I swear I tested all these last night and they were gangbusters. There we go. All right, whatever. So I saw this and was like, am I missing something? So this person says, I think we can all agree that growing an audience is a top priority for podcasters, which is a great way to start. This is almost like a sales letter where it's like, let's get them saying yes. Let's get them saying yes. One great way to do that is by guesting on other podcasts. Yes, but finding the right shows to collaborate can be a challenge. Is it? Okay. Would Buzzsprout ever consider, because this is a Buzzsprout Reddit, would Buzzsprout ever consider creating a tool to help podcasters connect? Something like a matchmaking service where hosts with similar audiences but unique perspectives can find each other and collaborate. Think of it like Podmatch, to which I kind of went, yeah, it's called Podmatch. That helps indie creators cross-promote and grow together. So, wait, you just said Podmatch does what you want Buzzsprout to create. If I'm Buzzsprout, I'm going to go, yeah, Alex already made it. It's Podmatch, it's Podcast Guest. There's a bunch of these things. Or maybe Buzzsprout could launch a weekly show featuring different podcast hosts, giving them a chance to promote their content and reach new listeners. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that like every podcast? Like that interviews podcasts about there's go to podcastaboutpodcasting.com. There's a list of 72 shows where podcasts talk about other podcasts. With so much competition, there's the problem. Independent podcasters, often struggle. Remember, Joe Rogan's independent. Well, he was until he joined Spotify. Often struggle to get visibility, and something like this could really help. Just a thought. And so when I saw this, I was kind of like, doesn't this already exist? Like, don't we already have this? Isn't that what they're talking about? Because he says, again, and now the button works. That's the fun part. There's the one that makes you scratch your head. Didn't work a minute ago. Push the button now and it works. Something like where similar hosts can find each other and collaborate. You're in a Reddit group. I'm like, am I missing something here? Or is it just somebody wanting somebody to make a tool so they don't have, I don't want to insinuate that they're lazy, but it sounds kind of lazy.
Well, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right. Let's not name call. Okay.
They're They're probably new. They're not as familiar in the space. And yeah, you come to a service like that and you're kind of like, well, wouldn't it be great if you just did everything for me? And if you spent a bunch of money to put a podcast together that benefited me and, me and only me, I don't really think those collaborations work that well. And I could be wrong. YouTube may be a different, in the YouTube space. I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers doing collaboration episodes on the weekends or some other things like that. And maybe, I think maybe if you really like those people you're collaborating with, that probably makes a difference. I don't know. I don't. I do listen. I do. Home Gadget Geeks does a lot of collaborations, right? I've just Gavin Campbell was on from HomeTech.fm last night. I don't know, or 2 nights ago. I don't. I have Gavin on because he's interesting, not because I want his audience,
Right.
right? And maybe the collaboration is great. I mean, for me, in the sense that he makes me a better podcaster, but yeah, it is a way. I don't want to poo-poo it. It is a way, and I think it's important to build a community and some of those kinds of things to get that stuff done. And I think it's a good way. I mean, I do think it's a great way for content. I'm just not the I'm not the biggest fan of going after guests thinking it will grow your audience. I just don't.
Well,
I don't
and it's
think I'm that's not my I don't like that philosophy. I just don't have them on because they're interesting, or have them on because they add content to great stuff for what you're trying to do, make your show the best. Just it feels slimy to me to do like, oh, I'm gonna if I had Joe Rogan on my show, man, my numbers, well, they would go up a little bit for a while,
yeah,
then they go right back down. Because
yeah.
guess who they came for? They came for Joe Rogan, right? Have them come for you. That's the be so interesting, so influencing, whatever word you want to throw in there, that they're coming back because they want to hang out with you.
Yeah. And
That's yeah.
the thing that gets me is, like, if you do interviews, the biggest thing that comes from an interview is your network grew. That's it. The relationship you get with that other person. Yes, it can help because people didn't know your show existed, and you're on a show about green peppers and you do a show about green peppers. So yep, that you should get some people that want to listen. I listened to the first green pepper show on Monday. I want to listen to the second green pepper show on Tuesday. But I don't know. Just I just saw that and was like, okay, I get it. Yep, it helps. But the thing that I always hear is when people say, I'm mad that the guest didn't share the interview,
Yeah,
because
no, right on. That's
the
what I'm
past
talking about.
month I was on Podmatch and I got interviewed a lot, and I'm here to tell you I did the same interview 3 times. Like, it's all, because
Yeah.
on one hand, of course I do, because people want to talk about podcasting. So yeah, they're going to ask me about how to grow, and they're going to talk about equipment. What was podcasting like in 2005? And I get that, but you got to keep in mind, I just shared that show, and I share on social. But again, we've kind of proven that social isn't really a great way to grow your audience. But
Well,
and
the
oh
guests I love. I love content creators and podcasters because they make great guests. They know what they're doing. They have great mic technique. They are fun to be with. I mean, Uncle Marv comes on my show from time to time. He's a great guest, right? He's a perfect fit for my audience, and we have great conversations and we have fun doing it. I enjoy I enjoy that part of it. Do I want Uncle Marv pimping my podcast? Thinking, well, if he does, it's fine, but he doesn't have to. I don't know. That's not why I had him on. I had him on because he's a great guest type
well
deal. So yeah,
the
that's my philosophy.
well, here's the fun thing. I'm using Zoom for Ecamm, and Danny Brown is now in the Zoom call.
All right.
I can see him. I'm waving at him, and I'm like, usually you click on a button and it was like I could switch over here. Maybe if I go to this look, let's bring him up on the new cool look thing. But
Ooh, I like this.
I don't like, usually there's a thing and I click on Danny and go, okay, add him to guest 2. And I must be missing a Zoom window. There we go. There he is. Okay, because I'm like going, what the heck? Add a camera, and then we add him to. Nope. See, it's still doing the same thing. Can I drag and drop him? Ooh, that'd be fun. Survey says I can. Well, there we go. The one and only Danny Brown. How are you, my friend?
I'm all good. I'm all good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So,
How are you two fine chaps?
we're playing with technology live, which is always great fun. So,
And I noticed you put me on the big screen, which I do not like.
here,
I'm going to have to like drop my resolution to like
I
240 or
will
something.
do. I
I think
had.
Ralph mentioned that earlier.
There we go. Now I just got to get you back to. You can be guest 1 and guest 2 or something. There we go.
Oh,
Much better.
wow. There you go.
Yeah. But you said you had thoughts. I saw that in the chat room.
Yeah. I'm going to just raise your blood pressure again. Just come back to the Spotify thing, the
Yeah.
announcement about the plays. I think the like there's two things there, right? It's great that they're being transparent and it's showing what people were actually doing on people's podcasts. But the problem is so there's two problems I think with it. One, it is transparent, but it's Spotify's transparency about what they class as a play. And you mentioned James couldn't get any information. I was on their support team. I was going back and forth with one of their fine support people about what the new definition was, and they were confused. They thought it replaced streams, which it doesn't replace streams. Streams still exists on Megaphone Enterprise, so that was confusing.
Yeah.
But it's I feel it can work against indie creators, because if you've got, I mean, I think you mentioned it, Jim. You might only have, say, 100 plays, but Spotify might be number 10 on your actual listening apps, right? It could be way down there. You might have Apple, you might have Amazon, you might have Good Pods, Pocket Casts, etc. And so if you're looking for, say, sponsors or advertisers, etc., they're going to look at, oh, well, podcast in the same niche as you's got 1,000 plays, you've only got 100. I'm going to go with these guys, even though your audience might be a lot more engaged, a lot more sticky, a lot more suited to that particular sponsor, etc. So I think it's great that they're trying to get transparency, but it goes back to the whole thing. I know Dan Lefebvre in the chat mentioned it. Following YouTube, you've got listens, you've got viewers, you've got plays, you've got downloads, you've got certified, you've got non-certified, you've got compliant, you've got engagement, you've got consumption rates, etc. There's no set metric for what people should be looking at. So it's great they've gone transparent, but I think it's not going to help in the short run anyway, until we actually know, what it's like and it starts filling out. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, it's like I said, I love the transparency. I wish somebody said in the chat room, wouldn't it be great if we had a system? Like, what is it, OP3? I love that.
OP3, yeah, John Spurlock, yeah.
Yeah, I love if we all used OP3 so we could all see. But then I also the question that is like, would anything change? Like, okay, so I thought, 200,000 downloads an episode, and it turns out they get 80. And somebody else that I thought got, 500 downloads an episode gets 1,000. I don't know. I guess, because to me, downloads, the biggest benefactor of that is advertising. But otherwise, do I care? But then again, I could see people wanting to be on your show. Why? Because you have more downloads. So it might make that easier as well. I was just trying to okay, what if that was the case? What changes?
Yeah, and I think, I know a lot of like especially podcast production houses and the bigger ones are looking more for listens, right? Sam Sefi over at True Fans is doing some great stuff with his app when it comes to listen percentage, how far in are you getting, what's the repeat listen rate, because that's what you want as well. You want to get repeat listeners. If you can get someone that listens to 4 of your episodes, that's better than trying to find 4 new listeners to listen to 1 of your episodes, right? And that's more attractive again. So I feel that's where the industry needs to go, is like from a metric point, is look for listen, or if you're on YouTube, obviously watch time, and YouTube gives you super granular data. You know that, Dave. If that could be sort of moved over to podcasting, and downloads are a good starting place, but you could have auto downloads switched on, get a whole spike of downloads, and for a non-educated advertiser, a sponsor, it might look great, but then their money doesn't return anything, because you've just got a whole bunch of auto downloads that nobody ever listens to.
Yeah.
So,
but if you want to make people wet their pants, that would be fun to make public. Show their completion percentage. Ooh, that would be embarrassing.
Wow, but I listen to a lot of podcasts that I don't actually finish. Like, I'll get 90% of the way through, and then they have a thing at the end that they do all this. They do the same. I don't need to listen to I don't need to listen to the ads at the end. I'm good, right, from that perspective. So, this is difficult. Like, this is the hard part of when you count. What are we counting? And it seems like from the very beginning, we've always struggled with the term of count. And I don't know if we'll ever get an answer. I don't think this is a technology thing that we're going to solve, because you're right. If we consolidated it down onto a single app, we could get some consistency, although we'd fight what that app meant, right? From that perspective, right? Even if we did that, you want the diversification of it. You could have your own app, which I think would, in some regards, might be the smartest way to go. But then you got to funnel all of your folks to your app. to say, I did this for a while. Homemade Gadget Geeks had its own app on Android and iOS. And, I got a couple dozen folks to download the app and to use it, and you get total control over it that way. But it's not the whole universe, right? So we go back to this all the time. I would rather we have an engagement stat that matters. Danny, you alluded to this a second ago. Like, we need to engage with that. If it's ads that we're doing this for, we need to engage with those advertisers in a way that where the what's the engagement of that ad? Are they doing something with it, right? I think that takes some salespersonship to do that, right? You got to sell the ad company on, hey, let's do this thing and we'll do this and we'll agree this is the outcome that you're looking for, as opposed to download. And I know nobody's going to it just from a download perspective, but I still like it when we focus on the engagement. What's actually happening in this thing? What are the, this is why affiliate is so strong in a lot of ways, because they pay when they get paid, right? And that's the proof's in the pudding on that one. So I'm a big fan of those numbers. I don't get too wrapped around the axle on downloads. I get the Spotify thing, by the way. And Danny, I think they should allow the user to flip it on or flip it off based on what they want, right? I don't know why that's so controversial, but
yeah,
I agree with you.
And while I have you here, I'd never used them till this week. Coolest tool ever in Captivate. There's episode planning, and I'm now doing a show for Akron, Ohio. And so I see all these stories, and you load a Chrome extension, and you're like, oh, add this to the Akron podcast. And then when it came time, I just went over and I had kind of started the show, and I wanted to add all those links to the show notes. And I just went in and said, okay, here's the episode, add this one, that one, and this one, and done. And I was like, I don't know why I've never used them, Mike. That's a really cool tool. So kudos to you and the guys over at Captivate. That was really cool. Dan says, hey, is showing downloads social proof? Kind of. The fun part is, like James this morning, I was listening and he said, when he was trying to get like, what's a play? He said, well, it should be something that you can only do if you've logged in. And I was like, okay, I get that, because then you can't send a bot to it. But it's just one of those things. Everything's going to be, there's always going to be a bot for something. It's hard. I mean, Danny knows. He works for a hosting company. I was amazed when I went in the first day at Libsyn and I saw the actual raw stat, and then I saw post Libsyn, post IAB. It was like, minuscule compared to the actual number of just insane bots that are hitting MP3s and such. So that would be interesting. So,
well, it's funny, just going back to Dan's point, even that can be gamed. I know a podcaster a few years back where he was claiming to have X amount of downloads. And the benefit of working for a hosting company where a person hosts is you can check these numbers.
Oh, yeah.
And bless him, he was counting all his combined shows network stats and sharing that screenshot as one podcast analytics chart. Which, fine if that's what you want to do, but that's going to come back and bite you. If you're talking to sponsors and you're saying, well, I've got 100,000 downloads, but your podcast, your main one's actually got 5,000, for example. So yeah, it's until Spotify and Apple and Amazon, I guess, want to open up their data sets to everybody, podcaster, creator, hosts, self-hosted, etc. I think we're always going to have this. It's just, it'd be nice to be fully transparent and say, well, this is what it is. At least Apple tells you, this is what a play is. This is what an engaged listener is. Percentage, listen time, etc. Just have the same, with. I know. I think Sam was speaking about Sam Seffi was speaking about. Or John Spurlock, OP3. Sorry, John Spurlock was on about. He'd created a short code or a script that any podcast app can utilize, and that will open up listen time and listeners, etc., to hosting companies and creators who wanted that data. So that might be an option to look at as well, from an open source point of view.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So, excellent. Well, Danny, anything else?
Thanks for I just had to get that question. Thanks for having me on, chaps. Always a pleasure catching up and speaking.
All right, man. Great seeing you.
Thanks for coming on, Danny. Appreciate it. Thanks for showing up on Saturdays. Appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
For sure.
We'll see you. All right. And yes, that's going to show up every time I go to that scene, which is just reminding people to subscribe. So That's
It's not a
always
bad idea. Not a bad
no.
idea to remind people.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
he made an interesting point before we move on. He made an interesting point about total network stats. And
Oh man.
listen, I'm in that game because, you know, we probably have done 14 or 15 different podcasts on the Gallup network. And while some of the smaller ones, you know, we've done episodes in other languages, and we've kind of created niche podcasts where we did them for a season or two, and some we only did for 8 seasons or 8 episodes total. So I have to be really, really careful when I quote internally when I quote the numbers. You know, I think we've done 5 or 6 million downloads now, but that's over 12 years, and that's
Wow.
total, right? And so that's why I make sure I tell people that. I'm like, hey, our influence with podcasting has been, let's just say it's 6 million. It's been at 6 million over the course of 12 years, right? And let's do, you know, that's 500,000 a year when you start doing the math. It's
Yeah.
not one I'm trying to say, wow, look at how great we are. I'm just trying to say, yeah, we've got some influence out there, right? And then we dig into the individual, and then I'll talk about each of the podcasts and the flagship one that does the best, and here's where it is, and here's where it's trend. Dave, the interesting thing is over time, because, you know, we've been both of the flagship podcasts we've been doing now for 10 plus years. And so if you just look at the raw numbers, I mean, it looks pretty impressive. Even with the monthly numbers, it's still pretty impressive. You're like, oh, this is for what we do. This is pretty cool. But I think it's important, at least for me, speaking of transparency, to be very transparent in the way I say that, and to make sure I'm adding those includers in, and not just say, well, I've done 6 million. Well, no, I haven't done 6 million. The network has done 6 million over the course of 12 years, and across 15 different podcasts or whatever. Right. And just to be transparent. So all those things, the transparency in that. And this is what I hear Danny saying, it would be nice to get, whether you show them on the page or not, it would just be nice to get some transparency around what that is. I have a feeling a network engineer created this thing and then didn't share it with anybody else. They just did it. And maybe internally they need to have a learning session where they're like, hey, what are we calling a download these? Or what are we calling a number, whatever that thing is? So that there may be, hopefully there may be some engagement or some transparency coming as we wrap up this Spotify conversation. Some transparency coming where they actually define it.
Here's a great point from Chris from castahead.net. Can't wait for the DMs and emails from Spotify podcast promoters. No, a professional Spotify. That's the thing I always love. I'm a professional Apple promoter now, who are essentially click farms to get your numbers up. Yeah, that'll be the next thing. Because as soon as I heard that, I was like, and as soon as people like, I can't let people see I get 13 downloads. I've got to find a way, you know.
Yeah. What can be measured can be gamed, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes. Danny alluded to that. You come up with a way, you think it's bulletproof. People are amazingly smart. They'll find ways to game it. And, you know, it doesn't matter because those click farms are easy to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I haven't done this in a long time. I went to the Apple store, and so they had 3 laptops sitting.
A physical store?
Yeah, the actual physical store.
With humans?
It gets worse. In a mall. I went to a mall to go to the Apple store, and while I was there, yes, I subscribed to my show on every laptop.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. I think they're probably all on the same IP, so it's probably not going to count as 3, but I was like, hey, while I'm here. But I used to go into Best Buy this is, 20 years ago. So that's the fun part was,
That's a lot of work for one download. Right?
Yeah, but I've got more followers now. I got 2 more followers when I log into Apple.
It's you though.
It's me. Yes, that's the problem. You then have to live with yourself, and that's where you go.
Then you can't sleep at night, right?
That's right. I'm an imposter. I'm king at the Apple store. All right.
Did they have a support group there where you could get together with other podcasters and talk about collaborations?
They should.
Maybe Apple should open up a section of their store for podcasters to just come and there'd be some chairs and some coffee and maybe a whiteboard you could write things on, a projector.
We could all talk about how it's no fair and
PowerPoints.
There's no discovery problem. There's a discovery problem because nobody's discovered my show.
Apple, it's your fault. If you just gave us a place to meet, we
That's
would
it.
be better podcasters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturday morning, 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. That's where you come and meet.
That's
You
right.
want to meet other podcasters, you come here. We got some great ones in the chat room.
Absolutely. I'll hit this button and we're going to hit this and see if the button works this time. Survey says no. I'm here to tell you. All right. I will just do this again.
I love that.
I'm clicking on the share screen. Maybe here, well, let's go back to here. So, none of my Stream Deck is just not working now. Let's go to Dave Solo. Nope, we're just going to, and instead it changes the thumbnail on my Stream Deck to that image that's on the screen. So we will just, what are we going to do? We'll go here. Nope. Now nothing's working. Here, let's go to Jim Solo.
It's locked up. We've locked up the screen.
Something's going on here that, no, it's just, as far as I know, we're still looking at next topic, right?
Yep.
This is riveting audio right now.
Awesome. You'll want to delete this out.
Yeah, I will. And what's fun is I'm manually now going and clicking on share the screen. And
yeah, Uncle Mars says time for a coffee pour. So here we'll
that's it.
Let's go.
Yeah, and I can't quit Ecamm. I'm in the middle of a recording.
Oh, those worked. Those sound effects worked.
Yeah, sound effects are great. We can, every time I go to share the screen, hey, isn't this fun? Take my wife.
An audio podcast for the
rest of the show.
For the rest of the show. Next topic that never actually came.
Yes, the next topic was, well, I'll just read it, and I guess we'll look at this, and I will continue to press the buttons in the background and hope that it somehow just, in the same way that it just quit working, maybe it will, that's so weird. And the other thing I'm doing just on my Stream Deck is I'm hitting all the buttons in the event that maybe one was stuck. And that's it. The button was stuck. Holy cow.
Well, I thought you were going to take the since we were there to recognize our.
I should have, but while I'm here, we'll do this.
All right.
But it's because I was like, what else would cause this? I'm like, stuck button. These are the things that you learn after 20 years of.
Did you spill wine on your
no
soda? Or?
No, nothing sticky anywhere near my Stream Deck. That's okay. I'm in the process of overhauling and restarting my show so you can understand things and give me advice and context. It is a news type show where I discuss several current event items per episode. The episodes average 40 minutes in length. I host with Libsyn and use Podpage for my website. Well, yeah, and that's not why I picked this. And these notes will be both for the podcast player and the website. I know what information I want to include. I just want to confirm the order. And this is where I go, wow, we're really thinking a lot about this. Would this work well and look the best as many different places as possible? And should the intro, the number one summary, stick to 250 words or should it be longer? So I'm like, I was going to listen to it, but it was only 230 words and I couldn't. So, but it says an episode summary intro of 250 words, AI generated based on articles discussed. Okay. The thing for that opening paragraph for me is, does it make me want to listen to it? That's what I'm trying to do in my opening paragraph.
Well, who are you doing it for? Who are you doing it for? If you're doing it for generative AI, you got to do it one way. If you're doing it for SEO, you got to do it another. If you're doing it for humans, that might be a third way, right?
Yeah. I always go for the human factor because the last time I checked, it's usually humans that are, and in fact, I've kind of started
both. I think you can do both now. I think that opening paragraph is really important now with generative AI, and it needs to have a lot of how-to stuff in it. Like we did, this is what we're doing. It needs to be interesting to generative AI so it can use it. That's the way I would, if you're writing it for generative AI, right? If you're not, if you're kind of writing it for humans, just write whatever you want in there, right? Write something interesting. But generative AI definitely wants content it can reuse somewhere else, and it wants it in the first 250 to 500 characters. So I would absolutely try to get some interesting stuff up front, if that's your goal, right? If that's your goal, and I think you can write it in a way for both where that works. I think you can write it in a human way where humans like reading it, and you can write it in a way where generative AI will pick up on it. Definitely stop keyword stuffing and words don't matter. I shouldn't say that this way. Words are getting less and less important. Keywords, right? We used to buy words from Google.
Right.
Yeah, those days are numbered for sure. That's not going to happen anymore, I don't think. But unless generative AI switches over to doing keywords again. But for now, that's you need to have helpful content for the bots, for
That's
the
it.
generative stuff. Yeah.
For me, I'm like, I think most of the AI stuff is a lot of times reaching out to search engine results. So you still have to kind of rank in search engines so that AI can find you when it searches behind the scenes. It's like, So, but this guy said, the 250 word summary, AI generated, a bullet point list of the titles of the stories in the episode. So there's an average of 10 stories. Links to anything mentioned in the episode. Yes, that's the one thing people want. Really, it could be the 250 word summary, and then here's the links to everything we mentioned. A call to action, yes, if you want people to do something, and then links to socials. If I had to pick one there, I don't care about links to socials, but when I saw this, I was like, I don't know. It just seemed like he was kind of overthinking it, because to me, show notes are opening paragraph explaining what the show's about, so you can decide if you want to hit play. Maybe if you want to break out bullet points, that's fine. Just to, again, let people scan and go, oh, yeah, I want to hear about this. And then links. For me, that's about it. And then your call to action. So Jim, you see anything else that
No.
would you be upset if the socials aren't there? Because, I mean, there's going to be a link. One of those
No,
links is
not
going to be
anymore.
to the guy's
Not anymore.
website. So,
Yeah, not anymore. I'm just not connecting the way I used to on social. 10 years ago, it's Facebook and Twitter and,
right.
All of those things to get connected. Those are table stakes now. It's good to have them. You should have a list of them somewhere. I'd put them on the bottom. I wouldn't worry about that. I'd write that opening paragraph for the human eye.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, I think I talked about this last week. Take whatever you're writing and put it into AI and say, rewrite this in a way you'd like to see me write this so that it'll get picked up, and it'll rewrite it. It'll do that for you. It'll rewrite it in a way that's optimized for generative AI. So, and there's another trick you can do because the system will write it. It'll write it for you, basically rewrite it for you. So
Yeah.
then maybe a thing that's optimized for that. And then all the other stuff, the links, and like I put for the podcast, I put 2 forms I did 4, but 2 forms of timestamps. So I have quick timestamps first, and then a detailed timestamp list second, in case folks want to search through that. I thought nobody looked at it, but then Randy from my audience sent me a note the other day. He said, "Hey, your timestamps are off." It's like, wow, somebody actually looked at them.
Wow.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. We'll maybe have to pay more attention to them. Yeah.
Dan says SEO rules always used to try to find content that was created for humans.
They tried.
Does searching with AI work the same? That's a good question.
Well,
'Cause
it's
in
looking
the
for that how-to stuff, right? It wants to put helpful information together. That's what AI wants to do. It wants to be helpful in those ways. So make sure make sure your content is instructive, I guess is what I'm saying, which is the way we used to write it, by the way. That used to be the way. Remember the how-to blog articles that we used to write all the time? We're back to them. We're kind of back to them. Yeah.
You could always do the cheat thing where you go to Google, type in your topic, and look for the questions at the bottom, and then use those questions as topics for your next podcast, and make sure those questions are in the subheadings. I mean, that's kind of reverse engineering the content. For show notes, Danny says summary and reference links for topics discussed, then use chapters for each section. Yeah, that is something I think is going to be my new thing. Is just, and I'm going to tip the hat to James. James now at podnews.net, he starts off Pod News Weekly because they do multiple topics in that. And it starts off with, hey, Pod News Weekly Review uses chapters, so you can skip through, or if you're brave enough, listen to the whole thing. And I forget what the one last week. They've been using AI to do the intro. And the one was like, unless you're a fraidy cat and don't want to use chapters or something. What are you, chicken? Yeah, it's the theme. But
What are you, chicken?
I love chapters, and I just wonder if the average listener doesn't know they exist. And if so, that might be my next couple YouTube channels, videos, is saying, here's how you do chapters in, Apple Podcasts. Here's how you do chapters in Pocket Cast. Not so much how to make them, but how to use them as a listener. Because there are times when, like I was listening to Podcasting 2.0 last night, and I love Dave, love Adam, but 40 minutes of listening to Adam complain about coding was not really what I tuned in for. And I went to the chapters and they hadn't made them yet. And I was like, oh, so it was just a fast forward button, but I think chapters, especially for a show like this. So I let, how do I do the I let Descript make chapters.
Auphonic will do it too.
Yeah.
If you use Auphonic, it'll make chapters for you.
Yeah. Steph says some people have a summary and takeaways. They're probably using Captivate because Captivate does a good job with their AI for that. I don't get the difference. Anyone else feel this way? Yeah, a summary is kind of one's a paragraph and one's a bullet point. I guess in the same way, they are very similar. It's just another way to get, the keywords in there. John says, as a listener, I love chapter markers. As a podcaster, I hate inserting the chapter markers. Yeah, it's so what I do in Descript. This is the post-production for Ask the Podcast Coach. I go in and I say remove filler words, and then I uncheck it because it wants to remove them all, and then the show would be like 3 minutes long. So I just say remove and because we're going live. We're trying to figure it out, and from there I go now make chapter markers. And it makes, or I think I forget what they call them, markers. They might call them chapters. Wait a week or wait a couple days, and I'm sure they'll change it in their interface. And then I go, give me timestamps for those. And I hate that it will not put timestamps in the script. It'll put the chapter names, it'll put the timestamps, but it will not put chapter markers with the timestamp because that would make too much sense. But I can then copy those timestamps. I put it into like Notepad or whatever, and then from there, I just export. I'm good to go. And then I go in, and whoever the featured support of the week is, I go and add them as a pre-roll. I change them in the sponsor thing so that it says the featured sponsor is the featured person of the week. So it updates across everybody. And that's it. And the scary thing is I don't listen to it anymore. I used to listen to it all the time to make sure everything was cool. And I trust Descript enough now to go, I haven't really heard a really bad edit in a while. And I'm like, that goes against everything I ever teach. So I'm like, oh, you always have to, because usually if you don't listen to it, that's the one that has, the really bad mistake in the middle or something like that. Yeah, Danny says it's a great idea to let your listeners know you use chapters. Also a good way to encourage using a Podcasting 2.0 app. Yep, absolutely. And there are a lot of great apps out there. I really do. Danny says I use Hindenburg Pro, yes, as my DAW and insert chapters there. And then Captivate then pulls them and the title stamps, then pulls title and timestamps and the audio. Yes. I think most people that do chapters, because I know Blueberry does that. If you have chapters, they'll pull them in. I'd have to double check on that. I think so. Yeah. And Buzzsprout, I think, does that as well. I wish they would pull the URL because you can put a URL in Hindenburg. And I don't know that anybody does that. But that's my favorite way to make chapters, because the cool thing in Hindenburg is if you go up to the top where you have the chapters, you can right click and say copy as text, and it'll give you a list of your timestamps for your show notes, which is why I love Hindenburg. It's one of my faves. So, you know what else is one of my faves? That's right, my awesome supporters. I'm almost worried to press a button now. Yes.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, that's it. It was just a stuck button. That's all it was. Why it didn't work this morning with the screen thing, that's still a head scratcher. But you can be an awesome supporter by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And the show is brought to you by the School of Podcasting.com. Use the coupon code COACH when you sign up. There is a free, well, not free, but there is you can join worry free. Let's do that for 30 days as you enjoy the courses, the coaching, and the community. Right now, if you go to Ask the Podcast Coach, we're using Podpage, and if you want to try Podpage, you can use my affiliate link, which is trypodpage.com. And if you want to learn Podpage, you can go to learnpodpage.com. And right now, it's not their fault. It's the Stream Deck button. I'm using Ecamm to stream live, and you can find that at askthepodcastcoach.com/Ecamm. And Ecamm has 2 M's because, boy, is it good. And if you need more Jim Collison, and who doesn't want more Jim Collison, well, then just go over to theaverageguy.tv, or if you want to go crazy, homegadgetgeeks.com.
What?
And it's time, yes, for our supporter of the week. So let me pull that up that's the other thing that's still driving me nuts. Whatever reason, I can't have Ecamm and Chrome up at the same time. When I went to this, Jim disappeared. So is it going to be Craig from AI Goes to College, Ralph from Ask Ralph? Hey, I need to go get Ralph's new artwork. Ask Ralph is now confident financial. He's going to put it in the chat room anyway. It's financially confident Christian. That's my final answer. We'll see if I'm right. Is it going to be Ross Brand? Is it going to be Greg over at Indie Drop-In? Who will it be as I click the wheel and it spins round and round? Survey says, it was almost Chris. It is John Muntz from, no, it's not.
No.
Called it
Glenn?
Too soon.
You did.
Glenn the Geek over at horseradionetwork.com. If you like horsies and you like having a good time, Horses in the Morning is it's almost like a daily radio show. And he talks about horsies and stuff and more things. Been doing it for probably 20 years. He's got thousands of episodes. Check him out, horseradionetwork.com. And if you found this show to bring value to you in some way or another, whether that's we saved you some time, we saved you some money, maybe we saved you some headaches, maybe we keep you educated, or we're just entertaining, or maybe you just like watching people flail around as their technology fails. You're like, you know what? We can't get that anyplace else. Well, then you can, send us some, and see that button's not working now. See, I did all that setup so I could push this button and it's not going to work. All right. Well, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. I'm here to tell you, I cannot tell you how many times I tested this last night and going, we're all ready, because I wanted to hit this button. Yeah. Jim saw it this morning. He can attest that the
money shot.
Boy, there's a word for it. Yeah. So was working, and it's not working now. I'm like, okay.
I mean, that's what it was. It was a money.
Yes, it was a big shot of. Well, here I have to go to Ecamm, and which it's not going to let me do now. I got to go to Ecamm. Half the show is going to be edited out, and go to overviews or overlays. Show my overlays. There they are. And in theory, if I go to, that's this one, where did the money shot go? You know what? We don't care.
I mean, we do.
Gremlins have come and ruined the show today.
It was fantastic. Just you have to trust us.
It was here. That's right. I showed it to you. It was here a minute ago.
It was fantastic.
All right. Well,
it was fantastic.
Yay. The joys of live.
That's okay.
So meanwhile, back at Reddit, let me pull up another fun-filled question here. If you have a question and you want to jump in, you can go to askthepodcastcoach.com/question. That'll jump you right in. And then eventually Dave will see that you're in Zoom. And I now realized why last week, Ray from AroundTheLayout.com, the show about model railroads, he was probably in the Loom window, and I didn't have the Loom window open or something of that nature. Because I know we've used it before and it worked, and that just, if you could see the number of windows that I have open right now.
We almost, you almost want to, if you're going to join us jump in and then in the chat say I'm in the green room. I
I'm
think
in
that's
the
what he said last week. Was
Yeah, he
I was
said
in the
we're
green
out of
room.
chips in the green room. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
looked and I was like, no, because I'm looking at there's one window that has me and Jim in, Ecamm. And then there's another window to show me Zoom. And what I miss is when Jim joins, I hear this cute little meaning, hey, somebody joined. And I don't get that. I guess I could go into Zoom and say, make a noise when somebody joins. So I'm not there, but it is what it is. So we did that story last week. Let's scroll down. Well, this is kind of no, we're not going to talk about that. We talked about that.
Didn't Ralph have a question in
Oh,
the
he did have a question.
Yeah.
He did. Here we go. I wonder if our constant obsession with downloads actually makes us less creative because we are so focused on those numbers and not our true passions. Just a thought. That's a great question. I know a lot of people do that. They read exactly what I said. You go to Google, you type in your topic, you go down and you look at the questions at the bottom of the screen. And so, and then even if you're not passionate about that, I've seen people do that where they will, or I'll hear YouTubers and they'll throw a bunch of videos up just trying to see what's going to resonate. And so they finally throw out their fourth video. It's about this thing. And they're like, I don't know, let's just try it. Whatever. They throw it out, it goes viral, millions of downloads. And they're like, oh crap, now I got to talk about that subject. Like that's what resonated. Instead of, I want to talk about what I'm passionate about. And if it resonates, it resonates. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Maybe there are all sorts of other things with YouTube, whether it's the hook, the thumbnail, the title, there's all sorts of stuff that make things go viral. But I think sometimes we do get too obsessed over, and I get it. Why wouldn't you? I want more people to consume my content, but I know, yeah, you can really get focused on the downloads. And then, it's a case where you have to realize, was it the content that brought the people, or what? Did I just have a better title this time? I know I was looking at the Akron podcast, and there's a title that said the Linda Theater is being remodeled for Bernie Kosar, and it got way more downloads than anything else. And I said, of course it does. It has the name Bernie Kosar in it, who was a really famous quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And I'm like, okay, I'll just put Bernie Kosar in all my titles now, and we're done. And I'm like, well, that won't work. So I don't know, Jim, what say you about this? Do we get too focused on downloads to the point where we kind of lose it?
I think so. I think it's a pretty common. We go back and forth. Hey, listen, it's okay to be obsessed about them from time to time. They're good. If they drive you to be productive, awesome. If they're taking away from that productivity, stop. Do what you can to stop doing it. It's easier said than done in a lot of cases. So, I think oftentimes we expect too much from those numbers. Right. They're one measure of engagement in some ways. And I think we should be, like I said in the beginning, I think we should, the important number in that is what kind of results am I looking for and what am I getting? I often think our expectations on that are too high to begin with. I mean, it's a big space. There's a lot of things going on. It's a good, it's hard stuff. It's hard to get someone to subscribe.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
it used to be easy. It used to be easier, but
I was working with someone this week, and she's huge on Instagram, and she goes, but I'm not getting the listens. I go, it's like saying, well, it's hard. I know a lot of people that use the word impossible when it talks about getting people to switch platforms, which is kind of why you try to be everywhere, but that can be exhausting. But I know we've had people when I worked at Libsyn, and they would have, 90,000 followers, and then they'd get like 1,500 downloads, and they'd be like, there's something wrong. Like, I have 90,000 followers. I only got 1,500 downloads. And we're like, 1,500 downloads. Wow, great job. And they're like, no, not great job. I have 9. And like, it's just a case where some people like Instagram and they want your stuff over there and it's quick and it's easy and it's usually short. And now you're saying, come over and listen to my 20-minute podcast. I'm like, not everybody's going to want that stuff. So it's,
Yeah. I think that's saying it, it took me 5 years to be an overnight success
yeah,
is way more truthful in a lot of ways. We just don't want to wait. We don't want to wait for it. And by the way, waiting for it doesn't guarantee. This is the thing that's terrible about it. Like, you do all the formulas, you do all the work, you think you're interesting, you think you're doing the right thing, and then nothing happens. And you're like, what? I mean, there's no guarantees in that, right? There's no guarantees you do. This is the, this is the misinformation that we get from the current, or from any gurus around these kind of things. I guess we have to consider ourselves in that space. But of like, if you just do these things, no, you hope, and maybe, maybe some things will pop up. The factors are so many in success from that standpoint. I have 20,000 connections on LinkedIn now, and somebody's like, "Wow, how'd you get those?" I'm like, 6 years of every day following our customers, going out and connecting to them. They all don't connect back. Do I, it 6 years of work starting before the pandemic and then working that through the pandemic. So sometimes it's just a lot of little things over long periods of time that builds that success. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm always surprised, you think about a new business that opens up, and man, they spend a ton of capital getting the store ready, and they spend a ton of capital on marketing, and they canvass the neighborhoods, and they're giving out coupons, and it's super busy for a while, and then they lose momentum. And you're like, what caused that loss of momentum? What was it? Was it bad customer service, right? Which can you can lose trust in people, right? Did you not live up to the expectation of the marketing that you initially put out there? This like buying this this voiceover ad. You go and buy voiceover, and you get this super fancy intro, built for your podcast that's like shock and awe, and you got radio voiceover guy doing your, and now live from whatever, and then it's like, "Hi, everybody, we're coming today. We're gonna," and you're like, oh boy, maybe the image didn't match up, and it's a shock to the system when you come out of your very professional intro into maybe a less professional show. So there's so many factors associated with those that, and I wasn't acting. I wasn't being Todd Cochran, by the way.
No, I just love it reminded me of when I was playing in bands. There was a band, and I forget the name of it, but they had this big ooh-ah, here comes the band. The band is, ladies and gentlemen, and then be like, all right, how about some Zeppelin? You're like, that was like the most anticlimactic thing. I had
check
the green room.
Yeah.
I am looking at my Zoom window.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right. Good. That's so weird. And I'm checking the Ecamm window. I got nobody. But you bring up restaurants. I like to take podcasting and compare it to music, and I like to compare it to restaurants because they're both very similar. And we had a Jimmy John's open up really close to me. And I waited a month because I knew, like, hey, they got to train their staff. I walked in, and it was a train wreck. And the manager was openly yelling at the employees. And I was like, praise in public, discipline in the back, or however that goes, And I was like, wow. And then it was like $12 for a steak sandwich. And I was like, yeah, this is overpriced. It took me forever to get the food. I was like, and I've never been back, which is why I always wonder. I saw somebody and they were like, hey, I just released my first episode. I would love to get some feedback on it. I'm like, no. The store is open. Like, this is where you take your food and you find some people, or put it on your website, but don't submit it to the apps yet, and then get some feedback there. But I'm like, no, you're supposed to be getting feedback before you open up the doors and invite everybody in. That always drives me kind of like, why? Like, no, get some feedback first. Make sure that people like your stuff. then promote it, not promote it and then go, what do you think? And people go, yeah, that was pretty bad. I don't think I'll be back. Thanks for, so I wanted to bring up, Danny brought this up because I'm torn on this now. Danny says, I'm not a fan of listen notes. The data is primarily based on platform estimation, can lead up to the top 1% podcaster stuff. And I have a video on my YouTube channel where Steve Stewart was in the top 10 of listen notes and hadn't put out a show for like 7 years. And I was like, meh, and I've seen people at podcast events that as they're being introduced, Dave and Jim are top 0.5% in listen notes, which I'm going to say we're at least top 10 I'd have to go check for Ask the Pod. I know I used to be a top 0.5% for the School of Podcasting, but yeah, I'm also beating that WordPress show from 2013. Congratulations. So because somebody brought up, let me find it.
It's all how you define things, right? It's all in the definition.
Yeah. How is Listen Notes different from Good Pods? It's a good point because I'm sure there are dead shows in Good Pods.
Well, we go back to what's the definition of a dead show. Like we've had this discussion since the beginning times of this show of like, okay, so do you say, and this is where this is like the definition of common sense. I always love everybody's like, that should be common sense. And you're like, well, okay, what's common sense? Common sense to you may not be common sense to me, right? Kind of thing. Yeah, but I'm always right. Anyways. So how do you define an active show? And we said, well, if you've released an episode in 90 days, well, maybe I do bulk, bulk loading of shows. I make 6 or 7 shows and I do them over the course of a month. And then that podcast sits for 11 months. Does that mean I shouldn't be inactive? If it's, what about I forget the name of the show where the guy did 4-hour, it was a history show, 4 hours.
Oh, Dan Carlin.
Yeah.
Hardcore history.
Hardcore Street didn't do them that often. Like, so do you penalize them for that? Yeah. Right. And so all of a sudden, now we start arguing about like, what's the definition of an active show? And if a show hasn't done, if a podcaster hasn't put a show out within a year, is that well, maybe they come back to it. And then do we turn it back on? Guess this is the hard part about comparisons and comparing and standards, right? There's no easy, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. We absolutely should, but there's always going to be these fringe exceptions of this. Well, yeah, I just do 1 show a year. That's my podcast. Why should it not be counted in that definition? And they have a point, to it. So where 2 or more are gathered, there will be conflict. And so like, that's really what this boils down to most of the time.
It's my favorite Bible verse.
Yes, for sure.
Where 2 or more are gathered, there will be conflict.
Hesitations 420 is what I say. Hesitations 420.
It's my my new podcast, Conflict and Casseroles, a podcast about churches.
I love it.
There was Mark says, when we started, I didn't know what I didn't know. Didn't know to have it reviewed before. Yeah. Well, and that's it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't, there's no shame or
right.
There's no shoulds on this one. Yeah, just do. There's doing on these things. This is good. I think to come back to the original point of obsessing about downloads, just stop and that's harder said than done, but do things, get more content out there, or, don't look back and like, oh, I should have. Look forward and say, I'm going
to. Yeah. Ray says, listen notes is just like asking your mom if you're good looking. The answer is likely to be exaggerated.
I would not ask my mom if I was good looking. Listen, my dad called me fathead. So if that gives you any indication of how my parents, that was not where I was going to get feedback on things. Let's just be really clear about that.
Yeah. And then Deviant says 90 days seems like a fair cutoff. It does to me. But
is it?
But here's the thing. I'm sure right now the show Serial, which came out probably 10 years ago, is probably outranking other shows that came out last week, because
it might be outranking our show here.
Oh, I would probably guarantee it. Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, I get that.
I just don't. Well, and then you say, okay, well, how about we have all shows, and then how about we have active shows as defined by
Yeah,
90 days? Well, okay. I mean, then
that
now
would be
you've got
good.
some, yeah, again, you got some transparency.
See, and Dan has a great point here. The root cause of all this seems to be that podcasters compare themselves to each other
Yes, they do.
way too much. Yes, they do. That's
Yes, they do. It's good, but it's okay.
yeah.
Like that should make us use it as a drive to make you better, not bitter, right? Make
Ooh,
you better, not bitter. And so this is the hard part is we start doing the comparison and we get all mad, we get angry, and then we start throwing people under the bus and we start doing name calling. We don't need to do that. Use it as fuel to be like, oh, okay, what they're doing is really cool. I could do these things as well. Because you know what? Your competition's probably not even listening to your podcast. They probably don't care
no.
about you, to be honest. They just don't care. And so stop caring so much about them. But if there's things that that will make you better, certainly grab that and be better with it for sure.
Todd the Gator,
Yeah.
when looking at numbers, you want to look for trends and patterns, not the actual number. Yeah.
Yeah.
That helps.
That's a good way to look at it. Danny says, unless it's a pint of bitter in a English pub. Yes. Yes. I'm with you. I am with you on that one.
Well, comparison always typically, because there's always going to be somebody better. And so it eventually will lead to you going, yeah, I remember the first time, the guy's name is Yngwie Malmsteen. He's this guitar player that just can shred your face off. Amazing guitar player. He grew up listening to violinists, and there's a guy named Paganini back in classical days that just plays like 128th notes. So it's like, and that's how that guy plays. And I saw him in person, and I just went home and like, okay, I'm done. I'm never going to pick up the guitar again because I'm never going to be even close to that guy. And so, yeah, be careful comparing. Instead of focusing on other people, and look, that's not a horrible thing to do to see, like there are times when I'll see somebody and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but I would do it this way, right? To be inspired by other people. Not always a bad idea, but when you focus all your attention in it, like you said, it brings bitterness. Well, quit doing that. Kind of like, and then take the time that you're wasting obsessing over your downloads and your competition and all that other stuff, and go hang out with your audience and see what they're talking about. Because I mean, I worked at Libsyn for 8 years. I did not see a single person that like, how did you get your show to grow? I stared at my numbers like 24/7. And they just grew magically. Like, take that time and find out what your audience wants and then make it easy to share. I have a question for the group. I'm looking here if anybody, here we go. Randy Cantrell. Pursuing who matters more to me than volume, sheer numbers. I can shout to 1,000 people and nobody listen, or I can speak to 10 and get 7 to hear. Look at that. That's there you go.
Or we have 30 that come 30, 35, 40 that come every Saturday, right? And we could want more. We could be saying, God, Dave, how do we get to 100? Wouldn't it be great if we just had 100 on Saturday morning? Well, it would be, but you know what? We have 30 of you listening live, and whatever that number is in the podcast space and YouTube and some of those other things, right? You're important to us. That's why we keep showing up on Saturday. And you know what? There's some people who used to do this who don't.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're here. They're not. And so it is, and I'm not trying to say that makes us better. We're just still here, still doing it because we love doing what we do. If we didn't love it, I'd look at you, Dave, and say, all right, we're done. This is it. You can keep going on Saturday morning, go find another co-host, whatever. But we keep showing up on Saturdays. Why? Because we love interacting with you in the chat room and each other. And we'll do this as long until someone, one of us says we're done, or nature calls us back to the earth, right? One of those kinds of things.
Well,
so we're here.
This is one of the things I love about this, because I can get immediate feedback, and I want to see if I'm just a website snob. And this isn't because I work at Podpage, but I was going to Podmatch, and I will look at their, here's what the show's about. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, like if it says I'm looking for podcasters, I'm like, okay, cool. And then it's a matter of like is this audience somebody I'm trying to get in contact? And more importantly, can I bring value to that audience? And then I go to two things. I go to their website and I see who they're using as a media host, because they kind of guesstimate how many downloads they have. But if I see they're on Anchor and they're getting 12 downloads and they've been doing this for, 7 years, I'm like, okay, mate. But I have gone to people's websites and it just looked horrendous. And this is where some of my bias does come from. It's like, I know if the only way you have your podcast on your website is in what's called an iframe. So this is what a lot of people call them a jukebox. It's a player that has like 6 or 7 episodes and it's right there and that's the only place you can listen. You're missing a huge amount of SEO. Every episode should be its own page. And so I was just wondering, here again, since the topic of the day is obsessing over things, when I looked at their website, when my first reaction is, yee, does that then stop you from going on their show? Because I was kind of like, because on one hand, their listeners may never go to you're the people listening to the show right now. There are a lot of them that have never gone to askthepodcastcoach.com. Never. They found us in an app. They hit play. They're like, hey, these guys show up every Saturday. Let's do that. I don't know. Jim, do you think at all when you go to somebody's website determining if you're going to be a guest?
I don't go to their website first. Most of the time it's a recommendation. Somebody's like, hey, you got to listen to this. And I just go on my player and I'm not looking at their show notes. I'm not looking at their website. I don't care if it's a train wreck because I'm not listening to their website. I'm listening to their podcast.
Right.
Now, are there going to be some people who will be turned off by that? Sure. Maybe you don't want them as a listener if they are, right? You used to get, I remember in the early days, you used to get this, you had a individual who would hammer you on your misspellings or bad grammar, right? Whatever. Well, you know what? They're not for you. So fire them. Like, peace out. You're not for me. That's not really what I'm interested in doing. This is not what we're doing here. And listen, or you could use that back to the make it better and not bitter. You can take that advice and be like, hey, thanks. Do you want an editing job? Do you want to edit my show notes for free? I'll send them to you. You could edit them and we'll bring them back, right? Kind of thing. So, there are, I think there's situations in there where, if you get some folks, that doesn't mean you should have a shoddy website. Have a great website, make it as good as you want it to be, but don't let the website take you away from making good audio content. That's what we're here. That's what we're here for. Yeah. I think in most cases, if I listened to them and they were great, and then I went to their website and it was marginal, I'd be like, well, I guess they don't have time to, but it's okay. They're making great audio content. I'm going to keep listening to it. I just don't think the website's as important. I think sometimes we make it more important than it actually is. But it's funny, at the same time, be proud of it.
Well, it's funny because as you say this, I realize when I look at their website, like one guy had SoundCloud and he had actual like scrolling text like MySpace 1986-ish.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, and I guess my thought was, if you haven't put any time into the website, and again, you can go way too far on that. Like you said, you can obsess over the website to where you're not spending enough time on content. But it was just, there were a couple that I was like, wow, that's, when it's a brown background with blue text and, my eyes are going, I can't read that. And it's not because you're old. It's like, who thought blue text on a brown background was going to be, and I'm just like, eeh. And so that's, and I think Steph hit it. She said, it's your first impression. So, make something that looks good. I always just tell people every episode should have its own, because we were talking about SEO earlier. If you want to rank for a keyword, it should have its own page. On WordPress, just make a new post. On Podpage, it makes a post for you. It's just a way to we all want to grow our audience. Okay, well, there's this thing, everybody talks about YouTube being the number 2 search engine. Yeah, the number 1 search engine is Google, for now, at least. And, if you have a decent post with some keywords there, you got a much better chance. Danny says a website needs a good UI as a minimum. Yep. If you're forcing people to jump through hoops to listen or follow or et cetera, whatever, yeah, you've lost A listener. Uncle Marv says, bye, Felicia. Nice. Yes. Ralph says, if their website is jacked up or doesn't even work, I'm not doing their show, but someone told me the other day that websites are dead like snail mail. No, that's not true. Yeah, that's the same person that wants to sell you a link in bio solution, which has zero SEO. Like, yeah. Danny says, I'm a big supporter of always having a podcast website. You never know when an app will disappear. Yep, Google Podcasts or Stitcher, but your website is always there as a definition. Yeah, absolutely. I'm big on that. I remember when people were using, again, this was early days of the internet. There was a website called mp3.com, and it was like bigger than Facebook at the time. It was just huge, and musicians were there putting their music up, and they'd be like, oh, just go to mp3.com/Dave. That's me. And then MP3, people started uploading things they shouldn't to mp3.com, and they got sued, and then they got sold, and then they got sued, and then they got sold. And then, like, it's probably still around. I don't know who owns it now, but none of these people had their own website. And so when mp3.com got taken down, bye, Felicia. I guess they'll like, well, I guess I can Google. What was the name of that guy? Mark something? What was it with the guitar? I don't know. And you lost all. Whereas if, like Danny said, if Overcast goes away or, Pocket Cast or something, like they should know your website so that they can go find you. Because otherwise, have fun trying to find Dave Jackson because there's about 8 million of us. And one guy's a writer in London, another guy's a basketball player, so it's kind of tricky. It's your brand. So Deviant Lounge says, which is a fun name. I know that's their podcast, the Deviant Lounge. Most people don't search for a new podcast to listen to. They get referred by a friend. Yeah, I heard somebody try to say that word of mouth is no longer the number one way. And I'm like, I want to recount on that because, I mean, just this week, if you haven't seen it yet, let me see if I can get my, if you go to YouTube, we'll see how good this works. If I go to YouTube and type in Talking Baby Podcast, there we go. And there it is. This is hilarious. And it looks like it's really good. They have 2 episodes out. And as far as I know, as I'm here, I'm like, there's a whole bunch of talking babies. So maybe this wasn't such an original idea. But the one where with the kid in the white shirt, looks like he's wearing a wife beater, and he's interviewing the dog. And as much as I say AI, be careful letting AI make the content for you. AI does the video. I reached out to the guy and I said, hey, please tell me you're writing this. Because if AI is writing this, we're all screwed because it's really well written and it's clever. And the people I say, have you seen this yet? Are almost always saying, yes. Like this is going around now, the talk, because it's funny. He's talking about, my favorite is, he says, well, I'm a baby. I don't have any sense of time yet. Hopefully I'll get the hang of this in the past. And I'm like, that is such a subtle joke. I was like, oh, that's so good. And so, go to YouTube, look for Talking Baby Podcast. It's, but that's word of mouth. And I'm like, I'm not sure,
It's also not going to last very long. Like these kinds of trends come and go pretty fast. You hit on something like that, you better run like the wind, make hay while the sun is shining. You better go after it and go after it fast because those niche things come and go really, really fast. I can't think of any trends necessarily that go on as long. I mean, listen, we do this podcast about podcasting. The only reason it's not a wildly popular format, but we love doing it, right? And so I would say catching on to the latest trends. It's going to be a short run fast. If you're going to do that, go all in and run fast. Because
I didn't realize he had all these episodes. which is kind of interesting. But my thought is, if this really takes off, how long till it gets ripped off? Like all of a sudden you'll go to YouTube and you type in Talking Baby Podcast and there's 50 of them. You know, one's called Talking Baby Podcast on Fire. You know, so just for those of you that remember,
not
those
literally
days.
on fire. No babies were burned in the making of this. Not literally. Calm
That would
down.
be that would, although
It'll
you
be
know,
fine.
yeah, that would be bad
No babies were harmed.
during this. Yeah. So, but that's when I hear that, I'm like, no, because almost everything I consume on occasion, like I found some new shows because I had to go find podcast consultants for Podpage. We're kind of working on a partner program. If you are a person that works with podcasters, and here's a novel idea, and this kind of ties into like growing your audience. And look, we love our affiliates. Nothing against the affiliates, but the person that does I don't know, Adam 12 rewatch show, right? It's a very niche audience. They may know 2 or 3 other people that want to start a podcast. Where a podcast consultant or a coach or an editor or a producer or a manager works with actual podcasters. So we're just reaching out to those people going, hey, we have an affiliate program. We're working on a partner program, and I need to go trip Chris Stone and Jeff C, because they work in that space. And we're just kind of going, have you worked with other partner programs? Because we're trying to make one and we don't know what that means. And so at Podpage, I kind of joke, but it's not really a joke. We're not afraid of our customers, where everybody else is putting up layers of AI between you and the customer. Like, no, we'll actually just get on a Zoom call and talk to you. So if that's something you do, support at podpage.com, and we'll set up a meeting. And because what we're trying to do is, and this kind of goes back to where we're talking about getting feedback and they didn't quite think it through, is I still use the app Volley, but when it first came out, it was free. And I was like, hey, like before I go using this, like I don't want to build a business on this because it's free. And they're like, oh no, we've done apps before. This is our 4th business. We build them and sell them and blah, blah, blah. And we've got all these premium features coming down, and that's how we're going to sustain. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, fine. So I went and started using it, and they rolled out their premium stuff, and they're like, all right, premium number 1. And we all went, okay. Premium number 2. And we went, okay. And like they went through and all their premium features, we kind of went, yeah, I don't need that. Like I get it, but I don't need it. And so we all kept using the free version, and they went out of business. And then they finally got some more VC money, and they came back and like, hey, we got some more VC money. We're like, please take my money. Just take my money. I don't, and they did. They restructured stuff. But by not asking us ahead of time, hey, what do you think of this? Getting a review before you launch it, they kind of, it sent them out of business. So we're trying to do that with the partner program. We don't want to go, hey, here's the new partner program. Look, we'll come wax your car. And it's like, no, people are like, no, thanks. So you got to kind of know, and that just takes a lot of time, but we're trying to get a lot of feedback on that. So Jim, what is coming up on Home Gadget Geeks this week?
Yeah, Gavin Campbell from HomeTech.fm, a regular guest host on the show. We talked about some home automation. He's got a new robot lawnmower, which was super cool. Upgraded his electrical panel from 100 amps to 200 amps. So spend a little time talking about that. And just an overall good guy. If you're looking for some entertaining tech to listen to, check it out today, HomeGadgetGeeks.com.
Well, I've been working on this episode for a while. It's running your podcast as a business, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be long. It's got Steve Stewart when we're talking about profit first, but I'm throwing in a little bit about going bankrupt, which I did back in my 20s. And how do you go bankrupt? Like, how does that even happen? And then because he talked about it publicly, I'm going to bring up Ray Edwards, who made millions of dollars for years and filed bankruptcy. And so we're kind of talking about, yes, how to run your podcast as a business, but also like, how do you go about making really bad decisions? Because we've all done them. And the older you get, the wiser you get, hopefully, in theory. So that is coming up on the School of Podcasting. And I've been doing a lot of research on that. Some interesting things, because there are those stories, like you hear like, well, Amazon didn't make a profit for the first 15 years or whatever it is. And so they just start spending money, and you're like, yeah, but they had money backing it and all this other things, and you don't. And so when you run out of money, it's no fun. So don't do that. And don't forget, it is Mother's Day. And so call your mom, even if you're mad at her, call your mom. So that's an order. Excellent. And we will see you next Saturday. Thanks, chat room. We'll see you again very soon with another episode.